All right, and here we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Endless Report. This is episode 22 of the week here of August 19th. I'm your host, as always, Tony, here to give you the latest and greatest here in the gaming news this week. We've had a bit of a slow, I'd say, news month here in the month of August, a bit of a drought. A lot of the fall releases coming up, soon, a lot of announcements on the horizon here. But this week, we got a lot of big news. We got a lot of news ramping up here, some very interesting developments. So we're excited to crack into it today. As always, I'm probably going to go right into the news today as we have a lot to cover. So I want to crack right into it here. Bear with me as I pull up this first article. So to start off today, we got some interesting news, actually, potentially about the future of PlayStation here and about the future of the Marvel Spider-Man sequel. So as we talked about last week on the show, the first game, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, released last week on PC for the first time, which was a very big deal. Another PlayStation title going over to the PC, arena there, which isn't very common for them in the past. So a big push to PC for PlayStation at the moment. We saw it last year with God of War, Uncharted coming in a later date, as well as the other Spider-Man game, Days Gone, and they're continuing to push out their PC portfolio here. But the news today with this Spider-Man PC release is that there was some source code here found in the release for the original game that may be hinting at some future features, maybe scrap features from the original game, but more so what I'm thinking here is maybe some features that have been added to the UI here or to the systems for their new game that we're now finding in the code for the previous release. So if we scroll down here, I'm actually going to pull up, if I give me a moment here, I'm going to pull up the tweet itself right from Twitter here so we can get that front and center. So if I pull that up here, here we go. So this user on Twitter pulled this up right out of the source code here, and here we see some different tags here for the in-game UI that could potentially be used. We see Superior Spider-Man, Peter Parker is a Superior Spider-Man, Miles Morales is a Superior Spider-Man. So if you haven't played these games, both Miles and Peter Parker are the two playable characters in Spider-Man Remastered and the original, as well as Spider-Man Miles Morales. So in the second game, we know both players are going to be, both characters rather are going to be playable by the player here, but we've heard that it's a single player game as of now. People have been talking about the potential of co-op, obviously after seeing Spider-Man No Way Home, the movie that came out last year, and all the Spider-Man teaming up. The idea of having multiple Spider-Man and playing co-op in a game has been a very realistic and really cool idea for the fans. So this is more evidence here. We see, again, both of these characters competing, and there's actually tags in the code here for who is the better Spider-Man, which leads, to the idea here that maybe this is a co-op mode. We see the winner message here in the UI as well, being, again, this is probably some sort of multiplayer mode where two players can compete. And if I go to the next thing here in the tweet, it also says, in plain English here, if set ending co-op, character 2 will see this text, character 2 will see this text. So these are clearly code set up for a co-op mode here. And it remains to be seen whether or not this was scrapped. It could be from the original game that this was planned and never came to fruition. I'm thinking this is more so something that probably is planned for the sequel here. I don't think it was ever a plan for the original game to have Miles as a second playable character. That takes a lot of planning outright. And that game's story, of course, has those side sections with Mary Jane and Miles as well in the first game, but it does not have any other playable Spider-Man like the second game is obviously going to have. So this makes me think very much so that this is something from the next game coming up here. And there's actually a second story that came out of this release, which makes me, pretty much confirms this theory in my head, at least in my perspective here. Again, we got to take this all with a grain of salt. This is all leaks and all, leaked information here, but I tend to think this is sounding pretty realistic here as we go on to the next story, which is that as well as this drop of the potential co-op mode for the next Spider-Man game, there's also some hints here in the code for a potential PlayStation PC launcher. So, of course, this game did launch on PC. This is the code for Spider-Man Remastered. So, of course, you'd have some PC relevant code there, but this is not just, related to Steam or the Epic Game Store. We had specific lines in the code here, as you can see, for PSN account linked, PSN linking entitlements, PlayStation PC launcher outright, just stating that. So that bears the question, does PlayStation plan on creating their own online store, their own launcher? I don't think they're going to do something of the likes of the Epic Games launcher or the old Bethesda Games launcher that now is getting defunct. I believe they're going to stick to the monetization practice of supporting Epic Games, the Steam store, the relevant PC store bases as we will right now. But I do think as well, PlayStation's obviously really wanted to set their, their mark in this part of the industry. They've made a lot of comments in the past few years about what Xbox is doing with PC, with cloud gaming, with live service gaming. And now, as we've been talking about on the show, they're more and more delving into a lot of these avenues. So I'm very curious to see exactly how PlayStation, establishes himself on the PC space. Again, I don't think it's going to be an outright, here's our own store, you can only download our games through here. I don't think that's the way they're going to go about it. I think they've been really smart, so far, of just integrating themselves into the Steam ecosystem, getting the already existing very large, PC player base, engaged in that way where they're already comfortable. I think a proprietary, launcher is maybe not the best idea here. Again, we're gonna have to see exactly how they handle this. But if it is an optional thing where you can get it on Steam as well, and this is just another way to link your PlayStation experience more to the PC games, then maybe I think it's maybe a really cool idea. And either way, even if it's not its own launcher, I think just being able to link those accounts. Again, we've talked about Discord integration a lot on this show as well. We're still waiting on that from PlayStation, but being able to link your accounts across any platform, talk to your friends wherever you are, whether it is PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, what have you. Obviously, it's something we're all, happy to hear and hoping that works out in a positive way for everybody. But yeah, that's about it on the Spider-Man news here. But very interesting. Again, as I've said on the show, a bunch of previous times, I'm sure, definitely a big fan of those games and of Spider-Man. So I'm very excited to see how that pans out there. But we're going to continue moving on today as we have a ton of information to cover. So I'm hopefully can get all through all this in the next hour and a half or so here. We have another story about actually another potential Marvel game. So as we've talked about in previous shows here, of course, Marvel has been very happy with the performance of Spider-Man. Maybe not so as much with the performances of the Avengers game and the Guardians of the Galaxy game from Square Enix, which the latter unfortunately suffered from some of the the bad press the Avengers game got, but was a very good game as well, the Guardians of the Galaxy game. So I think that unfortunately, that whole Square group was sold off to Embracer, which we'll be talking a bit more about Embracer actually again later in the show to put a pin in that. But yeah, I think Marvel still understands, despite those two follies there. I think they're very much understanding of the value of their Marvel IPs and what that can bring to gaming, as we've seen with the incredible sales for Spider-Man. I think it's probably I know it is the most most highest selling game on PlayStation of all time, I believe. So definitely a good IP to have and to stay in good graces with the Marvel brand. And I'm sure Disney has been branching out now. You've seen that with their handling of the Star Wars IP, which, I haven't been a huge fan of in the past few years, the way they've handled their exclusive deal and the way EA has handled their exclusive deal with that IP for a long time. But we've seen what's happened with Battlefront, what's happened with some other releases where Disney was not happy. That deal has now been pulled out of as that expired, and Disney is very much, investing into more Star Wars games with other companies. We've already seen the one coming from Ubisoft Massive, which we haven't heard much more about yet. But again, I've been holding up this headline on the screen for a while here, so I'll get into it. There are reports now that Disney is looking into another Marvel game. So we've talked about maybe Black Panther. We also talked about maybe Iron Man. And now we get some more news here that there was a planned Iron Man game supposed to come out a few years back from the studio behind Just Cause, which if you played the Just Cause series by Avalanche Studios, that'd be very interesting. It's a series of open world games where you do a lot of, high action, theatrical, big in the air moments, explosions, weaponry. I think that'd be a studio that would be able to handle Iron Man really well. But unfortunately, this was a game that was canceled, a while back, all the way back in 2012, so about a decade ago here. There was some talk about the Iron Man movies when those movies came out, and they had their movie game releases alongside that. There was talks, to making a full game here. So it's a very interesting story here. We see that they were almost, I'm going to pull up this Iron Man movie gameplay here if I can mute this. But yeah, they had some of this from the Iron Man movie game. But we had a quick interview here, with Avalanche Studios co-founder who talked about them possibly creating this game in the Just Cause engine, which would have been really cool to see. Again, Iron Man was canceled by Disney and Marvel at this time, but we did hear that story last week with Black Panther and possibly Iron Man that this project could be coming back. So I would wonder if the Avalanche Studios would still be up to be doing this because they've just come off Just Cause 3 and 4. I'm not sure exactly what they've been working on at the moment. That would be interesting to to come off a 10-year-old canceled game and come right back with that in 2022 with the increased heightened popularity of Marvel as as we've seen the MCU grow over these past 10 years. Of course, it's really just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and that name really hasn't gone down in any popularity. So I could totally see that project coming back in that same studio, but we'll have to wait and see if it's Avalanche Studios who actually tackles that Iron Man game. But again, I know I'm kind of going rapid fire here today as we got a lot more articles to cover here, so I'm going to see if I can get through this in the hour here. So we're going to keep moving on. We have another big gaming story outside of the PlayStation or Xbox realm, actually, but another story from Netflix. So we've been talking a lot about Netflix as well on the show for the past, I mean, really over the entire summer, how they've been getting into mobile gaming, how they've talked about their, their streaming capabilities and their ability to maybe look into cloud game streaming. And now we get another article this week that this cloud gaming service is not just an idea anymore. They're going full steam ahead and they want to push this alongside their mobile gaming offerings. So going into more details here, I believe this article comes from NME.com here. We've heard that, after the release of their few big releases this summer, with Stranger Things coming out, with a few other high-profile titles here, we did also see that the company suffered a number of layoffs. We did cover earlier in the summer, the issues with the stock prices of Netflix, the stock, all of these stock options really basically disappearing from these employees' accounts. And many employees were banking on these stock options for a long time working at the company and virtually saw all of this, potential profit or money or savings that they really were thinking of sitting on, in their company portfolio going away so quickly. Netflix lost a lot of employees there. That being said, Netflix is looking to change moves here. Obviously, the streaming market in general has been a little chaotic. We've talked about HBO Max here as well on the program. We've talked about, what's going on there with Discovery and HBO, and them maybe, liquidizing some of these, these assets here, changing the streaming service and creating something new. We see Disney with their Hulu and Disney Plus package, them increasing their prices. We see Netflix increasing their prices. We see Paramount and some of the Peacocks and these other services struggling with their current model. So streaming is in a very strange spot right now. You're seeing a lot of articles talking about it. It's going to become cable again. This is something that I feel like I've been hearing for the last 3-4 years now. I remember taking, I did a lot of media and film studies in college myself, and taking a lot of our film classes. I had a TV class where we talked about TV planning and TV, and TV scheduling, and we were talking about, streaming is just not sustainable, and we were wondering where is this going to go. And I've really been thinking I don't see any future where we don't see some sort of consolidation again. And exactly how that happens, who owns that consolidation and who takes control of this platform that would make all of this easy. I'm not sure that's something that can just easily happen like that. Obviously, you have smart TV platforms, you have online platforms that can be these ecosystems for all your different apps. But it remains to be seen, out of all these streaming services, who's going to kind of reign supreme here, who's going to control and keep the subscribers in check here, and really become these couple 2 or 3 monolithic streaming services. That seems to be the way it's going. I'm not really happy the way I'm saying that. I'm not sure that's something we want to see again, with the prices going all the way back up to where they've been, because cable prices had gotten to a point where it was, I at least personally in my opinion, I would say a little more than it should have been. So I'm hoping that streaming can work itself out here. I'm not sure how Netflix's strategy here is going to help them. I know they've had a lot of trouble with their programming, with certain, people moving to other streaming services, and how they're going to compete here. Do they invest in these huge movies like The Gray Man that just came out with Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling? Do they invest in these huge blockbuster movies when they're not getting ticket sales? They're not getting any in theater audience here. These streaming services have been really reframing how they think about their profit margins here, how they think about subscriber retention and the like. Especially, HBO Max has been very vocal about what they've been doing. They're obviously in a lot of debt for what they've been doing over the past few years, and it remains to be seen, how television in general evolves here. So to bring that all back around to Netflix getting into cloud gaming, I'm not sure if this is going to help them here. I wonder if them branching out again, diversifying the portfolio does seem smart here, especially with the state of streaming television. That being said, they are Netflix. I don't think that they're in the worst spot here, especially when it comes to some of the other streaming services that I feel like could be on the chopping block in the next few years. That being said, Netflix has been in this game for a long time. They have been the leading player in streaming well before even these huge companies like ABC and Disney, the same company there, but Disney, HBO and Warner and all of them have really been trying to, get their footing in the market. So Netflix has, the privilege here of being, almost on a home field advantage, of having the knowledge, having the wherewithal of being in the streaming market for so long here. So I think they're smart to think that cloud gaming is a viable, option for them. I think cloud gaming, things like the Stadia, Google tried it themselves. It just maybe wasn't ready at the time. I do think a public, cloud gaming stream service like Game Pass, which we've already seen, working somewhat effectively right now, is going to be a market. Game Pass and Microsoft are very, conscious of that. I think Netflix is conscious of what Microsoft is doing, of what Google did in the past. We're seeing a lot of more, open-mindedness when it comes to things like VR, like, streaming, like the metaverse, a lot of these ideas that have kind of been on the fringe of mainstream gaming, if you will, for the past few years. We're really seeing a lot of that come to fruition here. So it remains to be seen exactly what Netflix does with this. Again, we just really heard there that they want a cloud gaming service, something like, Xbox Game Pass, like PlayStation Now, which I'd be remiss to not mention that as well. Forgetting here, something along the lines there. So we'll have to see how that competes, what goes on there when Netflix is cloud gaming. Maybe they could incorporate, their own game. I don't know about studio, but their own, game creative division. I'm thinking of things like Stranger Things, of properties like, that have that, notoriety in the pop culture sphere. This could definitely be, opportunities for video game, even partnerships, in a Fortnite skins. I'm sure Netflix would really benefit from having things like that, those kind of, IP partnerships that wouldn't take a lot of their own development work. So again, it remains to be seen what Netflix does, but we're going to keep moving on back a bit into the video game space here with another story on Call of Duty, actually. So this is a game, Modern Warfare 2, that's coming out in October here. We've talked about a bit on the show here over the course of the summer, but unfortunately we have some more negative news coming out of Activision. You may have heard of this story a few weeks back where Activision have been stealing player skins for their own battle pass and microtransactions here. So unfortunately, this was something that is not really a new story. This happened all the way back in 2019 when the original Modern Warfare 2019 came out. The character, I believe, was Mara, was actually a character stolen from a real life actress in a real life photo shoot for a movie that was still, in talks about being greenlit. So what had happened there was that movie, this author who had wrote a full-on novel series, had pitched, all these ideas, had shot, character art and concept designs, with actresses and actors in costume for his movie, then had these images taken by an Activision, team, made into a skin and made into a character in, the Modern Warfare Season 1 of that game. And there was really no legal recourse there because the movie had not been greenlit yet. There was no real copyright yet on the character. That being said, it was an original character from another source that was directly taken. So Activision at the time got a lot of flack for that, understandably. And now, unfortunately, we see again, we had a story only a few weeks ago, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago about an artist online getting their artwork stolen. And now we've seen this for the second time this month now. This time being a little more interesting, though, an actual former Infinity Ward developer, which is kind of crazy here. So this is, in Vanguard and Warzone, a game, the Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2 coming out this fall, being developed by Infinity Ward. And now you see a game here, actually, you can see the original design here that was taken. This game here actually comes from Midnight Division, who is making a new game. I'm not too familiar with this streamer. The streamer Dr. Disrespect is a very popular Twitch streamer. Again, I'm not too familiar, with his work, but I've heard of him before. But apparently, he's starting a new game studio. He's a former game developer himself, with some former Infinity Ward game developers who have worked on Call of Duty in the past. I believe they both, the artist of this art right here, who worked at Infinity Ward, as well as the streamer, both worked on Modern Warfare 3 back in the day in the past at Infinity Ward. So, they have their own studio here. They're working on their own FPS, and this is one of their concept designs. So, to come back and see this from Infinity Ward, which also, just on a side note, as a Marvel fan myself, we've been talking about Marvel today on the show. This also looks like Taskmaster, which is a villain from the Marvel, the Marvel universe. If you've seen in comics, you've maybe seen the Spider-Man game. As I just mentioned, he's a villain in the Spider-Man game. He's a villain in the Black Widow movie with Scarlett Johansson. They actually changed the character to a different character, but Taskmaster is still the villain. So a very popular character with a hooded skull figure. So I'm not sure how original this design was in the first place. Again, I don't think this design here gives me too much of that exact look. This is more so in line with a little bit more unique. Then again, it does give me that Taskmaster kind of vibe there. But this one not only is, I would say, directly, derivative, if you will, of Taskmaster, but of this design itself. It seems that there was clearly something here where Infinity Ward saw this former developer's artwork. I don't know, again, this is the kind of thing with plagiarism when it comes to plagiarism lawsuits, and that, that being said, I don't want to say outright here this was, plagiarism. This is why these things do get, judged on, and there is a jury to figure out whether or not there was intention here to take this artwork. But these are one of those things where it seems a little too coincidental to be true here. It seems like there is a lot going on. And like I said before, this happened only 2-3 weeks ago. And I'll show you these other screenshots here as well. I pulled this other tab here where this was some fan art. And I'm going to pull up this right on Twitter, actually, if you guys don't mind, so you can get a nice big picture here. But this was some fan art created here a few weeks back. You can see this fan. I'm not sure exactly what they were designing this for. Maybe just, just their own artwork. but it was this kind of fluffy dog kind of, type of character. That being said, these screenshots here on the right are taken from Call of Duty Warzone only a few weeks later. So you can see that, I'm not sure exactly when this artwork was created, but it looks like a very unique character design here. Again, I've not seen in many, I'm not sure where this would be taken from. Many other IPs here where you'd see a dog in a military, operator suit just like this. It's a very specific design, and it's clearly deliberately taken from this artwork. So again, I want to give Call of Duty the benefit of the doubt here. I want to say that they're not doing this, but it's tough when you have a game like this that has so much content going into it, so much pop culture content, and the need for all of this other unique content. Again, I'm not excusing any plagiarism here, but it does seem like this may be a likely truth here. I don't think that this kind of coincidence can happen 3 times, especially 2 times in a row like this, and not have some sort of implication here. I don't think that there's any. Again, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but this is something that we've seen across the internet here for a few weeks now. Unfortunately, it does seem like these designs are being taken. So I'm hoping that this is a practice that Activision and Infinity Ward and maybe Treyarch, Sledgehammer, all the Call of Duty studios can be a little more aware of in the future. Again, I don't think this is anything malicious. I don't think this is anything that someone did on purpose to steal someone's artwork. I think it was something that somebody saw. Maybe it was a single artist that did get a little derivative here, or was copying for someone's artwork, and other people in the studio weren't aware. Maybe I'm wrong in assuming that it's that innocent. Maybe they were aware. I'm not sure. But I do think that, again, it's something that's unfortunate. Again, it's not the end of the world, but I do think that these original artists should be credited. This is not something that should be going on, especially in an industry where people are, working hard and getting paid and rewarded for this work. That original artist is not getting any of that payment, getting any of that reward or recognition for this. Their now art being used in a game which played by millions, hundreds of millions of people. So it is something to be said when a small artist's work is taken like that. I'm not a fan of that, myself at all. But again, not much else to be said on that front. I think it was particularly interesting that this second time it was taken from a former Infinity Ward developer, more rather than any. Not that it would be good from any other developer, but from someone else that was formerly in that studio. It's even more of kind of an irony there that wow, this must not be the best practice here. So I'm hoping that things like that can subside. I'm hoping that that's not a practice we see more there from that studio. But moving on to something a little more upbeat here, a little more interesting. We did get a story about the adaptive controller. So you may have remembered a few weeks back on the stream, we did talk about Microsoft's adaptive controller that they released for accessibility, which is an incredible thing they've done here, where they basically have created this open source controller, layout. I want to say deck or a layout where you can put in inputs for many different types of control schemes to help with different types of accessibility for people who may not be able to use a regular controller or may have a different way of playing. So it really was a great invention there by Microsoft to be able to get a controller out that many people of different abilities and playing types could access and play. Now we see this actually comes through an interview story from IGN here. It comes through an interview through Reggie Fils-Aimé, who we talked about a few weeks ago, had just retired from Nintendo of America, being their spokesperson and one of their producers and idea men there for a very long time. He's been very heavily involved with the goings on in Nintendo for about as long as I can remember. If I really think about it, as long as I've been following in video game news and Nintendo myself. So in this interview with Reggie Fils-Aimé, he said that Nintendo had been working on their own kind of accessible controller that was not only accessible and had all these different input options, but was also compatible with PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. So it would make it kind of a universal controller here. So very interesting idea. I believe, and I don't want to, if I'm misspeaking here, I would like to clarify that. I'll look that up. But I do believe that the Xbox adaptive controller only works on Xbox or a PC, or an open source platform. I'm sure that you could probably figure out a way to get it working with a PlayStation, but I'm not sure if it's that much integrated or if Sony has put in any work to make that accessible on their console as well. So to hear an idea here from Nintendo that maybe they had an idea to make sure this was compatible on every platform, including PlayStation, which tends to be a little more proprietary, and Nintendo, of course, which they're very proprietary. Of course, coming directly from them, it would work on theirs as well. But this idea here would have been really cool, and I don't think it's something that we have to keep in the past here. We do see that Reggie Fils-Aimé continued saying, but also his hope is that the controller and the ability for that controller to connect with all of the various systems is launched and shared with consumers as quickly as possible. So this is something that was in the works there before he retired, but wasn't necessarily canceled or put to the side here. There's something that could still come of this. So I'm very interested to see if this ever comes to fruition, if Nintendo comes out here and released the controller. Again, here's a big picture of Reggie Fils-Aimé on the screen here if you weren't familiar with Reggie from Nintendo. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this article here. I'm curious to see how they go about it here. You can see this is the Xbox adaptive controller as well down here. I'm not sure if I'm going to zoom on that too great. Yeah. But basically what you can do is control. They have these big adaptive pads here, for easy access to certain control schemes. But you can also, you can't really see in this image here, it's a very small image, but you can plug in a lot of inputs on the back there, like I said, for a lot of alternative control schemes, things that wouldn't, just be a button that you can press with your hand. Maybe there's a lot of alternative inputs and things you can code, things you can use with microcontrollers, and people, who can create some really cool apparatuses for very unique situations where people can only play in a certain way. So again, a very cool invention there. I'm hoping to see more things like this. And if Nintendo can pull something off that's even more accessible and it can work on all the consoles, that'd be really fantastic. So looking forward to that, hoping that comes to fruition there. But we're going to continue to move on here, everyone, to our next story. Again, kind of rushing through the hour here as I monologue on. I don't want to monologue on for like 2.5 hours here today. So I want to keep it moving here. We do have, and this is kind of one of the last big things we're going to talk about today, and I'll get into another fun story after this. But we have kind of a two-parter here before we get into our last fun story and we wrap up today. This was something I was not expecting this week. It's something that is not really that shocking the more I think about it, but it was something that really came out of left field. So it's something I really almost haven't processed yet. And I kind of want to walk through this alongside you all today in the stream, because it was something that I had to read, maybe read twice. And I'm going to pull this up here. And you may have to read this twice as well as we get into this. So we've talked a lot about as well. I feel like I say a lot. We've talked a lot about, but there's been so many recurring kind of stories this summer where I feel like we've been kind of like in an episodic series here. There's more and more updates on some of these stories. So we get more and more updates here on Embracer Group. This is a company we'd heard about earlier in the year where they weren't really, what's the word here? Very famous in the gaming industry. Not a lot of gamers, knew about this company or knew what they owned, but they've been throughout this kind of acquisition period we've seen with, Microsoft and other companies, not just Microsoft, Sony as well, and other smaller companies, being gobbled up by these two. Embracer Group has been acquiring a lot, and this was, something that kind of forced us to take attention and say, who exactly is Embracer Group? I remember seeing a lot of articles even earlier in the summer saying, hey, like, who the heck is this company? They own all this stuff now. They're owning 2K games, the Borderlands series, and they bought up all the Square Enix properties a few weeks back. I just talked about it with Guardians and the Avengers and all those Marvel properties. They bought up, the Tomb Raider, Square Enix, those Marvel properties that went along with that, all of that stuff. So Embracer has been making a lot of moves, and this week they made probably, I don't want to say their biggest move yet, but really solidifying themselves as one of the biggest, movers and shakers of the year for sure. So this week, Embracer has not only bought limited run games, Singtrix, Tuxedo Labs, Trickwire Interactive, and Middle Earth Enterprises. So again, just to restate that, that's 5 game studios there, and some very notable game studios. I'm going to get into this in a minute, but limited run games, they actually release a lot of older titles that, may have fallen to the wayside or aren't released anymore, or newer titles that have very limited releases. They'll release them with special editions. So I'm thinking here of, you may have seen our coverage on the Knights of the Old Republic, that game being re-released, the original, as well as some of the Ninja Turtle collections on Nintendo Switch. Limited Run Games, that company there, has been releasing these physical special edition versions for games like that. Very nostalgia, filled, big crates with, pins, accessories, art books. If you're fans of these older series, which are really cool, especially, someone who's, I buy a lot of digital now, and I kind of regret it because of how much I love collecting physical media and having, my collection of, these are all my books, these are all my magazines or my games, whatever. Especially with these stores, one day in the future when they go offline and all of these PlayStation and Xbox games that I put hundreds and hundreds of dollars in may go offline with that. That's not really a great feeling. So I love the idea of having a physical disc that I know isn't going to expire someday in the future. And seeing a company like Limited Run Games, who has been really specializing in making sure some games that would really never get a physical release do get this really limited special releases. I'm hoping that maybe this Embracer Group money and this acquisition can give them a lot more, space to do that and do some really cool stuff with that company. But that remains to be seen. But the big thing here, which I've been kind of holding off, is that, if you may have seen on the screen here, is that they've gotten not only the rights to Middle Earth Enterprises, which takes control of all of the Lord of the Rings video games and all of those, rights that go along with that, but they've gotten the rights to the entire Lord of the Rings franchise. So just to clarify that, everything but the original Tolkien literature, which I believe is probably owned by his estate, or I'm not sure exactly how that's being owned, everything except that, the original Tolkien novels, the Lord of the Rings series, is now owned by Embracer Group. So they have just purchased not only the Middle Earth, video game series, but the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbit movies, the new Lord of the Rings series that's being developed by Amazon, and all that comes with all that Amazon money and that deal. All of the Lord of the Rings, extended universe, books, novels, merchandise, board games, everything that goes along with that. I'm sure there's a lot of tabletop, Lord of the Rings stuff as well. There's so much that goes into that brand, and that's all been sold to Embracer Group. Who's making so that's really something to be said there. Again, we've seen Marvel when it was sold to Disney. When we saw Star Wars also being sold to Disney. I mean, this is a Disney level kind of purchase, at least in my book here, to buy the Lord of the Rings just outright. It was kind of a shock to me. I had to reread it a few times this week. I thought it was just that, the Middle of Earth video games and the series there, but no, the entire franchise has been purchased by Embracer along with multiple other game studios here. And I'm remiss to not even mention those 4 other game studios. We'll keep getting into those, but such a monumental purchase from them. So it really something to be said there about that. Getting more into this article here, not much else I feel like to cover that other than just kind of discuss the magnitude of this here. But again, Embracer says this encompasses all of the key upcoming works, such as, again, the Amazon series Rings of Power, which we talked about, as well as the Warner Brothers animated film, which I have forgot about this, the War of Rohirrim. So Warner Brothers is developing a full Lord of the Rings animated movie. This was revealed, I want to say earlier this year, maybe late last year. Again, that was something that kind of I forgot about myself there until I reread that. So again, a lot going on in the Lord of the Rings series. They were really just getting into really reviving. Not that it ever really went away or anything, but they've really been into a really big push with that Amazon series coming up to get Lord of the Rings back into the mainstream, a lot more extended universe type content, and a very strategic move by Embracer here to grab them right at this time frame. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to hear that they've acquired this Tolkien-esque acquisition here to get all these IP rights. Again, these rights were worth around $2 billion here, and I believe the entire acquisition, including Lord of the Rings and all these game studios, I think it was around, I want to say, $8.2 billion. Yep, there we go. The price of the latest round of acquisition came to around $8.2 billion, around $77 million in US dollars. So I should put that out there. But yeah, so that was the number I read before. But really something else. Again, we've seen a lot with, in the gaming sphere with Microsoft and Sony, buying things like Activision or Bethesda for $7 million, $6 million. But still, to see the Lord of the Rings, that franchise, go for a similar price, it's really something crazy. It's really something, out of left field here. And I want to continue with this story because this actually wasn't the only thing that was revealed during this acquisition here. So I believe this article is only covering the Lord of the Rings side of the news here, but there was some other news throughout this acquisition. Again, not to overshadow all those other game studios, but there was some news here about the KOTOR remake, which I think was pretty relevant to what we've been talking about on the show. So I want to bring that up as well. So here we go with this article here on the screen. Hopefully you guys can see that fine. But we see here that we also got a report once the acquisition went down. They had said that there was a AAA game that was having some troubles that has now been moved to a different developer. So obviously we heard a few weeks back about the Aspyr Studios and their delays with the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. Again, I'm talking about the remake here, not the re-release that I was talking about with limited run games here. A lot of related topics here in the same acquisition here. But the remake of the game that's been developed exclusively for PlayStation, announced sometime last year at a PlayStation State of Play. We've heard no news about that since, really, other than all these kind of updates on is there staffing here? Is this game delayed? And again, it was delayed. And now we get this acquisition where the game is now, under Embracer control. There are reports here that we were taking this game and moving it. Again, this is all conjecture here because it was just a AAA game, but everyone's saying it sounds just like Star Wars here, where they may be moving it to Saber Interactive, who again has dealt with a lot of, it's like Aspyr has as well, but has dealt with a lot of the remasters and a lot of the development of a lot of Star Wars games in the past. So hopefully that's a good thing. Again, I see a lot of excitement though on the internet saying, "Oh wow, we transferred this game over here. Maybe we'll get another trailer, or maybe it's actually going to come out next year." And I'm not sure that's exactly how this is going to go down. Again, to think that the quote here is, I'll read this out before I even get too deep in my opinion. The quote here, quote, "One of the group's AAA projects has transitioned to another studio within the group. This was done to ensure the quality bar is where we need to be for the title," Embracer said. So that's all Embracer said about this. No confirmation it was KOTOR. Again, no one else is really sure what else it could be other than KOTOR, so that's why everybody's talking about it in this frame. I'm just going to take a sip of water here real quick. Yeah, but that being said, now Embracer Group has stated this in a very cryptic way, but Saber Interactive is, believed to be the one taking the realms of the game here. So I don't think that we should expect this game anytime sooner, or to make that make this be some sort of indication that the delay is not going to be as significant as it was. Again, I don't think it's going to be what some of the developers said in that conjecture of maybe we may not ever see this game, or I could say 2024 because I have no idea. I'm not sure if we're going to get 2024, 25 level of delays here just from this transition. But again, I don't think it's very easy. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt here. I hope it is easy, but I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world to transition an entire development of a game to another studio and go off of that with no hitches there, and everything stays on schedule. I'm sure there will be some delays. There will be adjustments in getting them used to what was going on with that game, how far they were into development, adjusting to what needed to be done there. I'm sure there's a lot of work that'll go into that. That being said, I want to be optimistic as well as everyone else is. I know people are really excited about this game. Again, it's one of my favorite games of all time here as a Star Wars fan, as a video game fan in general. It's one of the best games really ever. A lot of people love to say. Again, I think this is some Star Wars TIE Fighter footage, but you did see some footage there of KOTOR, and I believe KOTOR 2 as well in the background here I was just showing. So again, to see this game in a modern setting with modern graphics and to have all these player options with a modern combat system and everything would really be spectacular. Again, this is a clip from that teaser trailer of the remake. I'm hoping oops, sorry, I just got a blast of sound in my earphone there from the trailer. Excuse me there. But yeah, I think that's gonna be really exciting. And again, I'm trying to be optimistic here. Like I said on the show a few times in the past with all these delays going on. I'm keeping myself in the middle here. I'm not getting too excited. I'm not getting too pessimistic with this being delayed into the well future here. But again, I'm gonna be optimistic here. I'm happy that has been moved since there obviously were some troubles with the first studio. I'm hoping that this whatever the new studio is, I'm assuming it's Saber, as everybody's assuming. Again, it could be something else. Maybe they moved it to a 2K game studio or something crazy like that. Like, who knows what Embracer could have gone. Embracer owns a lot right now. They could have said, "Hey, Square Enix, take it to take a hit at this game." So I swing at this. So I have no idea what Embracer could have done, because Embracer could have done anything they wanted to. They could have given it to the Lord of the Rings team for all they care. At this point. So who knows exactly what just happened there? With this vague kind of comments on it. But we'll have to there remains to be seen exactly what's going on with the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. That being said, we're getting close to the end of my stories here. Again, I just said there was a lot there. I went through a lot pretty fast here because I didn't want to take too much of your time here with all these new stories. But again, it's been a week that, like I said in the beginning of the show, it's been kind of we've been a little bit of a news drought. We're in that period where we're waiting for those fall releases. There's a lot of delays. We're off the summer news schedule. But we're not, just into that fall high schedule yet either. So we're kind of in a little bit of that limbo here. But this week really surprised us with all of these big kind of out of left field, these acquisitions, these rumors of older games, of course, these leaks and rumors here. A lot of leaks this week to keep us kind of tided over for all these official announcements that I'm sure we'll be seeing in the coming weeks here. But to kind of wrap that up there on that Embracer story before we get into our last little kind of wrap up of the show here story, as we'll see in a minute, I do think, as I've said in the past few weeks, I won't get too much into this again as we've talked about it a lot, but I do think we're going to get some news from Sony in the coming weeks. We started off today's show with that news about the PC launcher, about the Spider-Man sequel, about God of War Ragnarok. There are other PC releases. We still haven't gotten a release date for Miles Morales on PC. That's supposed to come this fall as well. So again, there's a lot of games that still say fall 2022, and we're getting right into the autumn season here. So a lot of last minute either delays or release dates I think we're gonna get in the coming weeks here. That's for sure. I believe we are getting some leaks here, which we can't really verify. So I didn't want to make it an official story here, but there were leaks from some Tales of the Borderlands. Interesting enough, another Embracer group, 2K games there, the Borderlands Studios. I'm not sure exactly if that's being overseen by Embracer, as that is a Telltale series, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how that's being handled. I'm not exactly sure there off the top of my head, but I do think that was a leak this week that seemed very creditable. So that's another game that we can look forward to. But again, we've got a lot of other games on the docket here, a lot more to be announced. So we're going to have to look forward to a lot later this fall. Again, we've talked about potential, Gamescom's coming up in a few weeks here. So I may cover that actually on next week's show. I believe that's August 23rd, 24th. So we may have some news on Gamescom next week, if not the episode after. But stay tuned on that. Hopefully we get some cool Gamescom announcements in the coming weeks here. And then as well as that Sony State of Play. It's somewhere in the corner here. I'm thinking early September, mid-September. Everybody else is kind of thinking the same thing. So remains to be seen exactly what's going on there. I'm excited for it. But that's about it for the gaming news this week, guys. So I'm going to get into this last kind of fun story here. This is a little outside the gaming sphere, but this is actually another story relating to the Fallout television show. This is something I've been pretty excited about, as well as some other television shows, but this one particularly, as I've been a fan of the Fallout and Elder Scrolls series from Bethesda here. This is a show that's being developed on Amazon as well. Speaking of the Amazon TV series again, of their shows. And this is a show that we've seen is coming from the creators of Westworld, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, who I'm a big fan of Westworld. I shouldn't say I'm a big fan because I'm kind of off the ball here. I haven't really caught up with the last seasons here, which I know I have to get back to it. I did fall off of the show a bit in the last season or two there, as I've heard a lot of people have, unfortunately, but really was a huge fan of that first season, especially of that show. A big fan of that kind of sci-fi storytelling and the way they produce that. So to see they're taking the reins of Fallout, I'm hoping that they do this in a way that's really respectful of the franchise. And I think if they're doing a show with that production level, with the budget we've seen, and we've seen a lot of high, production level Amazon shows recently. So I'm not, too doubtful here of what they can pull off. And, we showed that picture on the channel. I'm kind of, you can see I'm kind of leaving these hidden here before we get into it. We showed that picture a few weeks back, who's actually filming in my hometown, Staten Island. My family's from in New York, filming at a older supermarket. They did kind of a rundown older supermarket. They were filming the rundown super duper mart from the apocalyptic setting of Fallout 3 and some of the other Fallout games, filming at that. So pretty cool to see them filming in New York here. I'm not sure exactly where they're filming these underground vault scenes, but that's what I want to show today. So now we got a lot more clear images of the vault and what's going on underground here in the show. So they said this is going to be taking place in Vault 32, which is not a vault we've seen in the game series before. Again, Fallout 3, we originally started in Vault 101, but this eerily very much looks like Vault 101 in these pictures. So I do want to show, if you're a fan of, if you played Fallout 3 in the beginning of that game, you see, you start that game off as a child. That game time jumps as you grow up in the vault. So this looks like it's almost exactly like the bedroom you start off of in Fallout 3. So very interesting here. Then you again see some of the outskirts here. It looks like to be either another set being built in this warehouse, in this filming warehouse alongside the vault, some sort of outdoor farm here with burnt down vegetation. Maybe it is sort of underground, compound thing in show as well. But again, this could just be an alternate set in a sound stage here. So I want to, understand there. I'm not exactly sure how they set up their sound stage here, but it does look like to be an outdoor location. That being said, we have some more shots here of the hallways. Again, I believe that is that same bedroom we saw in that original shot there. And we see a storage room here as well. If we go all the way back, I saved that last one, the first one rather, for last, because we see this is the GOAT classroom here. So if you played a Fallout 3, you may remember you take a test later on in the game called the GOAT test, which signifies, some of your player's character attributes and skills that you gain for your character trees throughout the game. So when you're taking this test, again, it looks like the set is very much knocked over here. I'm not sure if this is just because they're setting up the set here, or maybe like the video game, or maybe some alternative situation in the video game. Maybe the vault is compromised. Maybe you have some sort of enemy encounter here. Maybe there is some sort of action that goes on within the vault, and the characters of the show have to deal with some sort of emergency where things are being, destroyed and flipped in the underground. That'd be very interesting. We don't see a lot of that in the series. There are vaults, of course, you can go into during the open world environments where you do fight, different creatures and stuff. But we've never seen a game where your character, as well, has been part of really one of those scenarios. Usually your vault is in a very particular scenario that puts you out into the wasteland to go on a mission. So it'd be very interesting to see how the show tackles this. Again, they're taking a lot of inspiration from Fallout 3, it seems, which I don't really have a problem with. I think Fallout 3 is the way to go with this in terms of, the type of stories they're going to tell here. I think Fallout 3 is really a very good, starting point there. But that being said, that brings us to the end of all of our shows. All of our news today on the show here. Again, that is some TV news at the end there, but of course it's a very popular, game series I would love to cover. The coverage there in the Fallout show as well. But again, just some leaks there, but very much so, obviously not official, but very much so, can be confirmed as a very official looking Fallout Vault photo. So to see that a real life version of a Fallout Vault, either way, is pretty cool. So I'm pretty excited for that TV show. I think, again, I don't want to get too optimistic these days with how things go, especially with things like I'm a big fan of Halo. I'm not sure how I feel about that Halo show yet. I haven't finished it. It's been taking me some time to get through that. So again, video game movies in the past, we always talk about this on the show, we get into this topic, have always been kind of, hit or miss. Some people have, had a bit of a negative connotation of video game movies, but I really do think, and not just think, I really know that the video games are such an incredible medium for storytelling. And there are so many incredible video game stories that I would recommend just playing the game, even if you're not a video game player, that, to get these incredible narrative experiences. But that being said, if people who are really maybe never gonna get into gaming, or would, unfortunately, or maybe they're not into that type of interactivity, can experience some of these stories that, gamers have known to really love as some classic, stories here. Things like, fallout like The Last of Us. Again, I don't know if I'd use the word classic on a game that's less than a decade old. Maybe in terms of time wise, I can't really say that word yet, but definitely games that have set the standard for people really giving video games their due respect when it comes to really hard hitting narratives. And I don't want to say it's just The Last of Us or just these high profile AAA releases. There's so many incredible indie games, so many smaller games that I probably couldn't even have time to mention on this show here that really would benefit from getting these treatments. I mean, you've seen a very high profile indie game, but I think something like Cuphead, who has its own animated series on Netflix for some time now, I believe season 2 is dropping very soon. So again, we've seen a lot more success with these types of projects. I think a lot more, Netflix's Arcane show, their League of Legends show, was very successful, recently as well on Netflix. So you see a lot more of these streaming services and these media companies realizing how big gaming is. I mean, obviously gaming is the biggest entertainment industry. They're pretty, the other industries are pretty aware of that. And I think they're worrying, how exactly do we capitalize on that in the right way? How do we make the right video game content? And it seems like a lot of this, the right conversations are being had these days, which really is intriguing and really exciting to see. A lot more video game content that could be really exciting and really cool to see actually happening. So again, that brings me about to the end of the show here. I can recap and go on about all this stuff all day here, but I'm gonna get on with the show here and get on and hope you can go on with your day and have a great rest of your weekend here. So again, thank you everyone to everyone who joined as always. We appreciate you joining on the show here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you're looking on the Endless Studios dashboard here, make sure to hit me up on Discord. I'm always on the Discord server. If you have any questions or comments just on the show, if you want to talk about this stuff, I'd love to chat with you guys. And stay tuned for more news on future streaming. We have some more awesome plans for this fall. I think you guys are really excited to stick around and see what happens this fall here at Endless Studios. So thanks again, as always, for joining the report, and have a great weekend. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.